Yes, team, how are we? Welcome to another episode of the High Performance Coach podcast. We have an incredibly special episode today, as this is actually going to be my first official in-person guest. We've had our head of high performance, Mr. Troy Nixon, on the pod. We've also had our head of operations, Mr. Ben Leader, aka the Compassion King, on the podcast, but that was only virtually over Zoom. And today I'm joined by our head of athletic performance, the absolute GOAT, and the king of performance and all things being a hybrid athlete, Mr. Dan Reeve, who's travelled from Cornwall to sunny, or not so sunny, Scotland, and he's literally complained about how cold it has been since he's got here. For an incredibly special episode, as we've got our first High Performance Coach live event, Team Success Weekend in Glasgow over Friday and Saturday, whereby we've got over 110 of our incredible coaches coming to spend a couple of days with us to now be able to connect, engage, interact, and now be able to walk away with the crystal clear clarity, the safety, the connection, the belonging, and the certainty that they now need in order for them to be able to accelerate going into 2023. So Mr. Dan Reeve, welcome to the High Performance Coach podcast.
Thank you very much.
Dude, take me back to the Deca-Ironman. Firstly, I want to understand, for those that don't know, what actually is a Deca-Ironman?
So 10 times the distance of a normal Ironman. So we're talking 24-mile swim. We're talking 1,120 mile cycle and 262 mile run at the end.
As you do.
The best bit, yeah.
Casual. And what year was that?
So that was back in 2007. So we did it to the Rugby World Cup. So the idea was that we started in Dover. The idea was to swim the Channel and cycle from Dover to Cardiff to Millennium Stadium, where we'd sort of like have some sort of Welsh sort of thing there, up to Murrayfield, Edinburgh, and then down to Twickenham, and then we're going to run from Twickenham to Stade de France. Well, we did run from Twickenham to the Stade de France.
And when you now reflect back, firstly, people ask me this when I'm exploring and thinking about doing things. Where did that idea come from?
The year before, my dad had walked to Germany for the Football World Cup, and the whole sort of reason behind it in the end was that unfortunately my brother had died from leukemia. So his sort of dream, whilst he was undergoing treatment and sort of like hoping that he was going to get a bone marrow transplant, was that the World Cup was in the Football World Cup was in Germany the following year in 2006. So sort of the thing that he was like really wanting to do was to get to that World Cup, and obviously unfortunately he died in December in 2005 before that year. So Dad obviously wanted to live that dream for him, and he decided that he was going to walk. So he walked to Germany for the Football World Cup in 2006, 500-ish miles. He makes sure he tells me that to make sure I get that right. Not 300 miles, but then obviously the following year, the looks, the glances start coming my way. Right, your dad's done this, what are you going to do? Obviously you're not going to let your dad outdo you. So me and Rob, the other guy who I did the actual Deca-Ironman with, started just searching the internet, looking for the biggest thing that we could find. And obviously naivety gets you started, and then like bloody mindedness and your why gets you through it in the end. So yeah, that's how it sort of came about. So it's not something I went out purposely to do. It's through a tragedy, but in the end, like it's been a huge thing that's obviously like propelled me forward, and mindset wise has like allowed me to like probably go on and do the other things that I've managed to do afterwards as well.
Yeah, dude, I massively appreciate that. I think they're so powerful, and I think so many people will be able to kind of resonate in terms of just finding a higher purpose in actually now why they're doing something, and the impact that can actually now have. And when you do something and you focus on thoughts beyond yourself, where you have the ability to go and what you have the ability to accomplish and achieve, I think is just absolutely mind-blowing. So if you take me back to that moment, what impact obviously did that kind of tragedy and your brother passing have on like you and that mental resilience and that fortitude? And can you think of a time that you were really struggling and or like that was a very thing that just kept you going?
Yeah, it's like even to this day, like it's something that like I can conjure up and I can relay back to, like whether it be doing intervals on a bike, etc., etc. I can still go back to that moment and use that, and like the thing that I would try to get across to as many people as possible, and like is that we have the luxury and the privilege of being able to push our bodies like that. We have the ability to go to those deep, dark places that others like who potentially aren't here anymore, or who aren't able to do that because they're just not able to exercise. Like it's an absolute privilege privilege to be able to do that, like to push your body to its limit. So it's my why to be the best that I could possibly be, and having that in the background there has allowed me to like go to those dark places, like whether it be when I was enjoying the swim, like just wanting to stop, just being really fucking tired, like go swim for 14 plus hours, not a normal sort of thing you do, being real pain in the transition between the bike going to the first run, thinking that how can this actually be possible, how obviously having 10 days of like mainly quad work, suddenly then transferring across to running and having these like ridiculous DOMs and just like going up this there's a hill in London where the first run sort of went from Twickenham across London, and we finished up this hill just after Shooters Hill it's called, and not a particularly big hill, but I just remember going out there crying, just thinking that this pain, how am I going to actually get through 9 more days? But then you remember the reason why you're doing this, and you pull back on those thoughts, you pull back on those feelings, and it happens, and you put one foot in front of the other, you've got nothing else to do that day, you just crack on with it. And that's a powerful thing to have. It's a powerful feeling. It's a powerful thing when you've got a why that's strong enough that it can drive you to pretty much achieve, like on those sort of things, anything you want to.
And out of curiosity, prior to that, had you been wired that way? Like, even from an athletic perspective, like, had there already been like a level of capacity that you're at? Or was this actually now the real stepping stone that allowed you to really step into now, why you...
Yeah, so it's like 27 when I did this. And I've always, like, the why previous would have always been to be the best I could be. That was a regardless thing. That for me was something that I just had standards. Like, even as a kid, when I swam, I'd be getting up at 5 a.m. to go to school, before school to go and swim. When I played football in the off season, I was happy when I was on the beach, doing beach sprints, doing hill sprints, etc. I was happy to give up my family holidays to go to Norwich and like live with a family for 6 weeks in digs, etc. I was willing to do that because I wanted to like fulfill my potential. So it was there. Was it there to the degree that it is now, or that it has been in the past? Probably not. Like, I think it's a deeper why, it's a deeper meaning, isn't it? It's a deeper pain, it's a deeper anguish. It's like a real anger and like feeling of like something's been taken away from you that shouldn't have been taken away from you at a particular time, and that's powerful. It's powerful if you can use it and you can harness it. Like, you could take it in different ways. It could be the downfall of you. It could become anger and rage, and like you could achieve nothing from it. But if you use it in a positive way, then I think obviously I'd like to think that I've used it in a positive way as I possibly could. But you can raise awareness and you can raise money, and which then hopefully can provide research, which then can hopefully stop other people going through similar things in the future.
Massively. And is there anything from that journey and that experience that you went through that's kind of like really stood out for you as a lesson or a moment or a time?
Yeah, I think like the whole thing itself, like really it's believing that anything's possible. And like, we're not saying that I was an absolute beginner who didn't know how to swim, who'd never done any sort of running, etc. in the past, and was a relatively good athlete, as we've sort of established, but there were doubts that I thought that things could be possible. And I think whatever the process be, like, most people probably can't comprehend the distances that we're talking about, but if that inspires someone to get off the couch, then go and try the 5K, or it inspires someone to do the thing in their life that's their sort of like Everest or their whatever it happens to be, then that's what it was. And for me, it literally did make me actually realise that like naivety gets you started, like bloody mindedness gets you through it in the end. And that's a huge lesson. Like, I say that to all the guys, like when they take on challenges, etc. Like, you don't really understand what you are taking on, but that's a good thing right now. And that's good that you don't know that, because if you did, you probably wouldn't be doing it. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the big ones. But then also that just anything actually is possible. Like, if you have the right training, you put the right time into it, the right precision, then like you can achieve anything.
Mate, that resonates so much with me when I did the only way that I can almost kind of sit in your shoes, I suppose, with regards to obviously going through the event and actually just now having that bloody mindedness to continue, was when I did John O'Groats at Land's End. It was exactly the same. It's like you almost don't realise or appreciate what you're getting yourself in for, and then you get started on day one and all you now see is just the monumental amount of mileage that you've then got to do and how far you've now got to go. And that was literally just one end of the country to another, let alone obviously then having to swim the channel and obviously run 200 plus miles. So what were some of the things that you actually now use from a strategy perspective that allowed you just to kind of get back to the process and allowed you just to stay centered and focused on what you needed to do next and not getting overwhelmed by the just magnitude of the task at hand?
It's a daily thing, and like the thing that's come out of it, and I do use it with quite a lot of clients, and I used it with my wife recently when she trained for the marathon. It's just, you've got nothing else to do today, you just got to get from A to B. Like, don't overthink it, just take another step forward. Don't over worry about it. Don't consider the rest of the day. Don't consider how you're feeling. Just get from A to B today, and then let's just weigh up where we're at there. And one of the things that I said to the guys when I was doing the swim, had like a little support crew of friends, etc., who were on the boat with me. Not on the boat with me. They weren't. I was on the water. They were on the boat, but they were on the boat, and it was like, to them, it was. I'd given them sort of like 2 A4 sheets of paper, which was like communication I wanted them to do. They had a whiteboard. So on the whiteboard, they could write things, they could write stories from our past, like silly little things that when I sort of breathed over towards them, I could read, and then it would take my mind away for a bit. I could laugh and then put my head back down and hope that a fucking shark would eat me, because I just wanted it to be over. It never did. But I also said to them, if I said that I wanted to quit, that they just had to say, can you do another stroke?
Yeah.
And then the answer was, if I said yes I could, then they said, get the fuck on with it.
Yeah.
And it was just that reality hit of like, can you do another stroke? Just do another stroke. See how you are in 5 minutes, see how you are in 10 minutes, see, just go again. And like, it's the fact that if you're going to start these things, and again, like, I did a 24-hour cycle.
I remember.
I did a 24-hour cycle. I didn't tell anyone I was going to do it. I just decided I was just going to get on the bike, and I got a Concept 2 bike, and I just thought, right, I'm going to fucking see if this thing, so see who wins, see who can outlast the other one. Obviously the bike won in the end. A very sore ass. But I got to the point where the longest day I'd ever done before was in the swim, and it was 14 and a bit hours or so. And when I broke past 14 hours on the bike, I then started to get doubts in my head of like I had in my head I was going to do 24 hours. I didn't say anybody, and I started just posting every hour, and suddenly loads of messages start coming through, and you've done 10 hours plus, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? When I got to sort of 14, 15, 16, it was like, nothing to prove here. Like, why am I doing this? I'd like to do it, and it was for me. It was actually sharp. Did I still have the metal? Was my mind still there? Was I still that little bit slightly warped guy who can just go and go and go for the sake of just going? And that was the test for me. When I got to that point, it was then, right, okay, if you're going to do 24 hours, which is quite a nice thing to say you've done, you're going to have to come back to this point again. You're going to have to go all the way through everything you've done. So can you just do another 5 minutes, see how you feel? And you always know that 5-10 minutes later, mindset changes, something like takes over, you got that feeling somewhere else, a message might come through, or you might be watching something at that point, and suddenly you're not thinking about that anymore. So you just got to see those phases through, and exactly as you said, remember about the process, because the process is the thing you've got to enjoy as much as anything else. Like, we get into it, no one cares about the shiny medal at the end of the day. No one cares really. Like, you've got a lovely trophies downstairs, but you don't remember standing up on stage. You remember the times that you train with your mates, and the hard days, and the hard days of dieting, etc. You don't really remember the actual sort of like trophy moment, or the when you finish. You just remember the fun things that you did, or the shit things that you did on the journey.
Yeah, I think it's that elation actually at the end doesn't come through, like actually almost like the good. It almost comes through you reflecting on the shit and the hard times and the struggle and the amount of times in your head that your brain was just telling you, you're an idiot, just give up, just stop, what are you doing this for, why are you doing this? And there's that kind of like body-mindedness and the ability to be able to go, okay, can I just now put one foot in front of the other? Can I still live within this 1 meter squared? Can I now just strip it back to the process? And when you realise that this has nothing to do with the external and has absolutely everything to do with the internal, and just almost the belief and the confidence that you're building in yourself. And sometimes you can't almost like communicate why you're doing it, but you just now know that there's this like exploration, and it's almost like this experiment and this understanding, this depth of how far can I really go? What can I really learn about myself? Like, how far can I now really take myself? And you almost then elevate, the bar almost then becomes elevated, and I feel as though that almost gives you a level of like confidence in your own ability and a greater degree of trust in what you have the capacity to be able to now then go and accomplish and achieve. I think as well, like, what are the tactics and the strategies that you can now use just to manage your emotions, because it is like an emotional roller coaster. Whether you're doing a 5K run, whether you're even lifting in the gym or debating whether you're going to go to the gym that day, or whether you're now going to do a Deca-Ironman or sit in your living room and do a 24-hour cycle, there's still always that conversation that goes on in your head that's like, shall I, shan't I could just cut this corner today, do I want to do this today? And ultimately you can portray and project whatever you now want to, but when you shut that door at night and it's just you, it's that power, I think, of now being with yourself and now knowing that I've given it the best fucking shot that I possibly could, and I've left absolutely everything out there. But I think is a feeling that you can't get elsewhere other than facilitating those.
Just doing it, and doing it on a consistent basis and regularly. And like you said, you build the confidence in yourself. It's not just in your body, but your mind then trusts your body as well. You develop this relationship between the two where you haven't backed down. You've followed through. You've done what you said you were going to do. Like even this morning, doing like just those 1 kilometer intervals. It was like, I don't really need to do this. I probably just can get through this on the day and just do it.
Yeah.
But it says it written down there that this is what I've got to do today, and I'm gonna do what I said I'm gonna do because it's what I do.
Yeah.
And I don't want to not follow through on that. And like if I start following through on that, where else am I going to cut corners? Like what other parts of my life are potentially I'm then going to start to not take it seriously and just be that. I think it's for me, and I'm sure it's for you as well. It's about fulfilling your potential. Yeah.
100%.
That's what you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Just simply about the exploration. I think for me, it's always been that I want to now be able to get to the end and look back and go, okay, you did some really cool stuff and you really pushed and explored and actually really saw how far you could now take yourself. And I think we were talking about this. Dan may as well have flown to America too. In the time that it's taken him to get to Glasgow today. We sat in Glasgow for about 3 days.
Yeah.
In the traffic queue. We literally put the wall to right, and we actually said we should have just done a podcast episode then. One thing we talked about then was the ability for. I lost my train of thought now because I'm thinking about us. I'm thinking about us just literally sat in a traffic queue for absolutely ages.
Yeah, well, it was like we were just talking about everything. We went everywhere and everything, didn't we? Literally for an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. No, it wasn't that long.
But I think it comes back down to, like you say, it's the challenge, it's the exploration. It's how good can I now really go and be. And this has, like I say, nothing to do with the external gratification. It's just now literally that internal. It's those experiences that you're now looking for, and it's within those experiences do you now learn and gain so much insight, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and the ability to then be able to connect and communicate and then coach from a greater place of authenticity. And I think that's the experiences that you can now hold on to most importantly, that carry you forwards and also now allow you to recall and rely and relay on those to now be able to almost use as a kind of guidance.
Yeah, and as a coach, this is what we do. We lead by example. And we need to have been there. We need to be able to empathise with people and to have empathy with our clients. We need to be able to have been in similar situations and it doesn't have to be the exact same situations. It can be something that's relatable where it's been pain, you're struggling in life, but you can transfer them across, just like we can transfer things from one business to another business. Mm-hmm. You can relate across those things. And as a good coach, as a great coach, you need to have that empathy. And for me, leading and having empathy are similar things because you've been there, you've done it, you've worn the t-shirt, you understand, you can guide people through a situation because you have done that before. And if you're going to be a good guide, you're going to be a good coach, then you have to walk that walk at the same point as well. And whether the things that I've done have been for family reasons and out of anguish, etc., or they've been testing me, it's made me into a better coach down the line. And whether that was the realization at the time or not, I don't know. But actually, it's happened to fall in that way. And I like to think that now it's an experience and a skill and a knowledge now that I have, I can actually apply those things to then really, really impact other coaches and other athletes at the top level as well.
How would you say things shifted from the support that you had for the Deca-Ironman and the impact that had through challenging times for like the channel, and obviously seeing friends, and obviously the words written on the whiteboard that kind of almost reminded you, in then comparison to the 24-hour cycle where you're literally in your living room by yourself. You've obviously got Paula, your wife, basically feeding you as and when necessary, and applying bum butter regularly to now be able to make sure you get
some good pictures of that.
But like, how, in terms of obviously like the support, like how had that differed like for you in your mind? Because I know when I did the cycle, the people around me at points where I was at my absolute lowest, and even like the smallest of things like made such a big difference, just because it was that connection and it was that ability to now be able to feed off somebody else's energy. Whereas obviously the 24-hour cycle, you're literally, say, in the 4 walls.
Similar, like you say it that way, but now when I think back to the cycle, it's at the same point as well. Like timings when I started quite late at night. So I got the evening out of the way and the night out of the way when no one was going to be there, when I was relatively fresh. There was actually a game on that night, as in LA Rams, American football, which I follow. That started at 4 a.m. So as much as I say it's random, there are some events that I'm using at the same point as well as a crux to like carry me through and to take my mind away from things. Like I don't train with music. I never listen to music unless I'm on a hard interval and I need to recreate emotion or something like that, then I'll put a song in for it. But music again, and like those sort of things are performance enhancers. So I'm not going to use them. I don't need to rely on those things. I don't want to rely on those things. I want to save them for the moments when I need my performance to be enhanced. So why would I use that as something I'm going to use all the time? Spitting now, excuse me. But all those types of things. But actually, when I think back to the cycle now, when it was in that 16 to 18 hour mark, I messaged a couple of my good mates. Well, neither of them were on the boat, but they're my two like closest mates now, and said, "Look, this is what I'm doing." Because neither of them like follow me. They don't fucking follow my shit on Instagram. They don't care about.
Yeah,
they probably follow for about a week and they're like, "I'm not watching anything he does again because it's just stupid anyway." But then I started going, "Oh, like this is what I'm thinking. I'm here. I'm at this stage," and then I started getting a little bit, and they weren't necessarily like saying continue. They were just having conversation. Yeah. They were just like taking me away from the fact that what I was doing, and I just, again, pedal strokes just went round, time passed, and it's gone. And like although I was on my own, I still had like little things around which I think you need. Like I think I saw one of my mates tag me the other day saying there was a marathon the other day, or it's in a tunnel, or it was like an ultra endurance event that's just in a tunnel. Now that would be a pretty, like, there you go, that's one for you. Like, because it's a run as well, so you fucking love that shit. But, and people were literally going crazy. Like, as in they were seeing, like, things on the walls running around them. There's nothing in there, but it was, like, literally a 20-something mile tunnel in pitch black. And you're just following this tiny little bit of light. So, like, that's properly sensory deprivation. Yeah. Like you imagine like getting on your rower or just get on the bike and just turn on the lights off and then have a go. Yeah. Like that's getting quite interesting. Like with the swim, we had to do some night swims just in case the channel swim had to be done. We had to start with, you go with the tide. So on the day, potentially the tide could have started like in the middle of the night. So you had to take advantage of that. So we had to do a few night swims, and again, like, bit weird for the first few minutes. You're a bit like, what's going on here? Is there something around, something underneath me? But after a while, you're again at the same point of like, I wish something would just come in me and just get it entertain. Exactly, like I wish something touched my leg. Yeah. What happened? Yeah. We did those training swims over in the Mediterranean in Spain, and we're like swimming alongside the beach to start with. But the two of us, like me and Rob, the guy who I did it with, we're both swimming facing each other. So we're both sort of breathing into each other. And then before we realised, we like looked up after about 5 minutes or so, and then suddenly we're like, oh shit. We're like just in the middle, and then there was 3 groups of lights from 3 different towns, and it was like, which one did we just come from? Because we just like we got back to the right one in the end, but it was like family were all like on my uncle at the time was like on the beach like shouting at us, trying to get us to come back, but obviously you can never hear anything, so we just like beelined out there. But I think we've always had some sort of crux there. We always have something that we go back to that's going to help us through these times. Like, do you use things? Do you use music a lot, or You just voice note everybody.
I just voice note while I train. I think, mate, when I basically, so I kind of play football, bodybuilded. That bodybuilding kind of came from, I think, my own personal. Again, I was actually going to say to you, like, where do you think that discipline like really comes from, and that desire and that willing and want to now go and be your best? And that's what I was going back to. Actually, the conversation when I lost my train of thought is almost like you just now are simply operating from a place of like discipline, and you realise that you're not normal and you're a bit weird. Like, even at school, like I was saying this to Leanne, it's like I used to take raw carrots to school with a packed lunchbox, and everybody else eating Mars bars, and I'll be smashing a raw carrot, and I'd be like,
strange.
Yeah, Joe, you're a weird child. No wonder you don't really fit in. But it's like, well, okay, where does that come from? Like, you know, like that nature nurture, like what and where, you know? And I think how does that then carry you forth? And for me, if I think about that, like when I went to university, I kind of didn't lose my way, but I was still training. I lost football. I was injured, and I got to one point where I was like, do you know what? Like, I'm frustrated because on a subconscious level, I know on a conscious level, I know that I'm capable of so much more. And it was that thing for me. It had absolutely nothing to do with external. It had absolutely nothing to do with like trophies, medals, or anything of those things. It's just my own personal commitment to myself of wanting to now be better. And it's like, well, where does that come from? And like, what's really driven that? And I think there has been like some pain. There has been, you know, fear. There has been scarcity. There has been probably a need at a period of time for probably that validation and some connection. And like for me, like the catalyst was like, I just know that I'm capable of so much more. And I'd be getting up at 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning, living in a house with 4 other lads, and they would just be coming in from a night out, and I'd be off to go and do hill sprints. And this years ago, so I was literally eating like the same 7 foods for like 16 weeks, and it's like, mate, you were drinking protein shakes, and it was like cement mix, like the protein shake, but I was so resilient. Never forget one time I was cooking this is back in like the steak and nuts for breakfast. You're the mackerel king, and I'll never forget the boys had just got in. They'd been on a night out, and I was up cooking steak and nuts for breakfast, and the fire alarm went off, and they lost their mind. I was like, where does that come from? What drives me? And again, like I think, you know, you look at like different motives, and you look at now different things. And when you were talking, actually, you talked about the emotion when you were running and crying. It's like I was out running on Sunday, and I was thinking about stuff, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm like running around the village, and I'm crying my eyes out, running down the road, and it's like, and actually, I don't think this is something that people speak about, because I actually had quite a few coaches that say to me like, mate, is it weird that when I've been doing quite like long endurance events, I start like getting emotional? I'm like, I think it's completely normal.
Even like, training, like even now, like I can get into, like I said, when I get into intervals on my bike, and I get into the frame of mind, and I'm like pushing, I want to hit those wattages, and I want to stay at that wattage for as long as I possibly can, because I want to just like, because you're just that psycho person. But I will literally cycle myself into tears. I will be in tears. Like I've been like the setup when we lived with my mother-in-law recently, before we moved into our house. The bike was just in the kitchen, and like I've got my headphones on, the music's like blaring in my ears, and like for me, it doesn't need to be like, it doesn't even need to be like an absolutely banging tune. It can be a song that just provokes emotion, that just brings you back to a time of your life or something along those lines that like provokes that. And like I can just be sitting there, and I'm like sort of almost humming or singing, slightly sort of almost crying at the same time, like, and like you take your headphones off, and I just think that they're sitting in there fucking watching bloody
Strictly Come Dancing.
Yeah, exactly, in there. Or someone sat at like the dinner table, and they're just like looking over with me going like going crying. I must look like an absolute fucking state, but that's just they just after a while they just carry on walking past thinking he's fucking psycho.
I feel like it's almost like, again, it's like therapy, and it's not because often, even when I think about the weekend, I was just thinking about my granddad, I was thinking about life, I was thinking about, you just go to a weird place, and it wasn't from a negative place, and you actually just now use that in such a positive way. And going back to like, you like, what do you now like use, and what now kind of like really drives you? I think you just tap into loads of different things. There's like abundance and inspiration. There's obviously that exploration of how good can I now really be. There's also, I think, like the pain and the fear of like, well, what if I don't accomplish and achieve, and have these regrets and have these what ifs? And like even like one story that I shared, I don't think I've shared it on the podcast, was that I was a good cross country runner back in the day, not because I'd ever trained for cross country, but because I had to get a paper round, because I had to basically like earn my keep.
Yeah.
And so I got to a point whereby I break that many bikes, No, I just thought, do you know what, sod it, I'm just going to basically start running my paper round. So I used to run 1.5 miles to the paper shop. I'd have one sack over my left side, one sack over my right side, and then I'd have literally 30 papers left and right, and I'd run a 10 kilometre, 15 kilometre paper round, and in doing so I became incredibly fit and became a really good runner, and then 40 quid a week, which was, mate,
happy days.
Spending Peppermint in Woolworths, which
I was
was
going to say, you weren't buying 2020 bottles, were you?
No. I was actually having my Saturday
post. You buy carrots.
Buying carrots, and then I'd have my weekly pick and mix from Woolworths. And it's like, even that, I then became really competent and very good at cross country, and I started winning all these races. Went to like the Southwest, like regionals, ended up winning that, and there'd be all these kind of like people that were cross country runners, and I was basically doing, you know, curls and press ups and all those good things in my room, and reading Men's Health, and like wanting to now put on a little bit of mass and fundamentally just look good. And so I didn't really look like a typical cross-country runner, so I'd turn up and I would be winning these races, and I got to an English Championships. My parents had travelled all the way to Liverpool. They had a great weekend away. I think they just went out for dinner and got pissed and had a great time. And my stepdad always came with me to these events, and he'd be like, right, okay, Joe, like, you know, you used to see all these other kids that had their like teachers or whatever that were basically going around, right, okay, Timothy, right, when you go around this corner,
tactics,
this is what we want you to do. We want you to run at this cadence and at this pace and blah, blah, blah. And my stepdad would come in, he'd have a pie, he'd have a fag in his hand. And he'd be like, Joe, you see this bit here, mate? I'm like, yeah. He's like, run as fast as you can. And he's like, you see this bit here, mate? Yeah, that hill? Yeah, mate, just run as fast as you can. And I'm thank you for that. Anyway, got to the English Championships, and I was literally like 70th, or actually it was even worse than that, so I was like 150th in this race, and I got halfway up a hill, and in my head, I'm like, Joe, you're a failure, you're losing, you're not winning, what's the fucking point? You might as well give up, it's not even worth it, you're going to look like a fool. Actually, do you know what? People are going to have more empathy and more sympathy for you if you just give up and you just fake an injury, and that's going to be a story that you can now live with on. And I still remember that process going in my head. I remember the lactic in my legs. I can still remember the vest top that I was wearing, the people that I was surrounded by, and I remember I just went, yeah, fuck it. And literally just, it's like, oh, hamstring. And I pulled to one side, the St. John's ambulance basically came, was like, what's wrong, I pulled my hamstring or whatever. Went back, and that was me obviously out of the race. Our parents come over like, what's happened? And I was like, I pulled my hamstring. My stepdad knew all along that I hadn't pulled my hamstring. He was like, I knew you were bullshitting, by the way. And he still tells me to this day, he's like, I knew that you were
I always remember that one thing.
I knew that you were bullshitting, mate. You were lying, and I could feel it. I knew it in you. I could tell, and I could see it in your eyes. But like that for me, like now, that feeling, that emotion,
you're never going to forget it, are you?
Like of me giving up on myself, had nothing to do with winning the race. But like that feeling and that emotion that I still feel today, that I gave up on myself, and I didn't now leave it all on the, on the grass, and actually I didn't give it my best shot, is the very reason that now, doesn't matter how much I'm struggling, how much pain I'm in, how hard it is, I will never give up on myself, because that is literally just in my brain, that is so ingrained. And that is, I think, a fear, like, for me, of like having that and experiencing that emotion, because in that split moment, like the pain eradicated, and I almost then came back to logic, and then it's like, whoa. Shit, so it's just that perseverance, like you were saying, like, can I just get through this next stroke? Can I get through this next pedal?
Because you know it's going to finish. You know it's going to end. Like they always say, don't they, quitting lasts forever, and it does. Yeah. Like you won't forget that. And like I've only got one story. I remember one story where I've done it as well. And it was in a strongman competition, like a place called Commando Temple in London. It was Commando London's strongest. And the first couple of events had gone really well. One of the first two events went into a Husfeld stone carry for distance. And like an endurance things, an endurance athlete, those are my bags. And it was 105 kilos, so you had to pick it up off the floor and then just basically bear hug it and just carry it for as long as you possibly could. And I'd gone really hard in the previous event to catch the guy, which was a tyre flip event, and I was still I could feel it in my legs, and I was a little bit sort of under, and it came to this like stone, and I just started going, and I could just tell from as soon as I picked it up, I was like, nah, you're gonna just drop this in a minute, and you're not gonna go, and I just went and did a few laps, and then I just stopped. Yeah. And my wife, like Paula, came up to me and literally said, "You just quit then, didn't you?" I was like, "Yeah, I did." Like I can, like you said, you don't. It's not something that goes away from you, because I didn't give it my all. I didn't go to the point. And normally I would find that thing to then take those extra steps, go that extra mile to try and win it. But straight away it was the point of like, before I was even began, like the difference for me was that before I even began, I was already broken.
Yeah.
I knew that I didn't fancy this on that particular moment. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go to that pain. I just experienced it like very, very not that long ago. It was almost like another interval was coming up, and I just wasn't recovered, and I wasn't ready. And it's just, no, I just haven't got it. But it's one that sits with you, and it's like, it makes me well, I just don't want to go there again. I don't want to have that feeling again, because that quitting is not, it doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't feel right with me. And I don't want to experience that again. So it's like, right, fucking that's done. No, not going there again.
Is that like, so I love the phrase, like some lessons have to be experienced in order for them to be fully understood. And it's like, unless you now know what that feels like again, that's something you almost like can't tap into. You know, and I think it's the same with anybody that we now, even from a coaching perspective, I even say this, whether this is now within like business, standing on stage, running your 5K, like whatever it now potentially it looks like. And I shared this actually with the guys and girls the other day. It's like, if you now know that you go out on the pitch and you give it absolutely 100% and you got beaten by the better team, you're okay with that. You will walk back into the dressing room and you'll be frustrated and you'll be disappointed, but you now know that actually you can be quite proud of how you've been able to turn up the effort that you've given, and you can sleep at night. But if you now know that you've kind of half-assed it and you've not played to the level and or, you know, put yourself out there to the level that you now know that you're capable of, and you've not done the work, and then you don't get the results that you're now looking for, that's a feeling and emotion that will never leave you. And I say the same with like business. It's like, if you now know, right, okay, I have gone absolutely in, I've done everything to the best of my ability and I've played to win and it's not worked, cool, okay, I can move on, I can draw a line in the sand and you can move forward. But if you now know that you're living within this, but what if, and what about that, and I didn't do that, and you can tell yourself a story and you can tell other people a story, because I certainly know that I've done in the past. And it's like about how it's the market, how it's this, how it's that, or whatever. But you now know, once again, when you shut that door, that, okay, you now know that you just didn't find that edge and you didn't go and you didn't give it what you now know you're capable of, because of maybe the fear of failure. Or maybe actually, what if it does work out? And what actually if I do now, you know, go quids in and actually, do you know what, I do push myself, and actually what if it then becomes a success? I think actually a lot of people fear success, because they like the chase, they like the challenge. It comes back to the process again. It's like, it is the process that you actually now enjoy and endure, and that underdog mentality and being in the chaos, you know, that actually you enjoy, rather than actually the, well, what if this actually does work out? And that
self-sabotage comes on, and then they start going, oh shit, actually this is going well, let's get back to that, what I'm used to, where it's not successful and where it's not going my way. Yeah. But also as well, like we live in that world now where people just want things for not actually doing the work for it as well. They want it, and if it takes a bit of work or it takes a bit of time, it's not like on the horizon. Actually, it's going to be beyond the horizon. You have to go up that hill. Maybe it's not that hill, it's the next hill, it's not the hill after that. Whereas in this day and age, like so many things that we see and that we can do and that we can get, Amazon Prime, it's like it's on your doorstep the next fucking day. Whereas actually, a lot of the fucking things that you want in life, probably not Amazon Prime. They're not the good things anyway. Like, you don't go and fucking get, like, you don't get your fucking car delivered the next day, do you? Or you don't get your fucking Lamborghini delivered, etc. They wouldn't deliver it the next day. You'd have to go and you'd be taken to a nice showroom and you'd spend time and they'd take you through a process and you'd see all these beautiful things and like you'd take it on a beautiful test drive, etc. So like that's what something good is. It's a process. It's falling in love with the whole fact of it. And anything good, I think, we sort of like learn from and we grow from is about the journey, and it's never going to be something that's going to happen overnight. Yeah,
and I think it's how you perceive the challenge. Like ultimately, there's always going to now be challenge, but it's not about how do I eradicate the challenge. It's how do I now perceive the challenge, and how do I now use the challenge to now be to grow, learn, develop, evolve. How am I getting better as a byproduct of this? And that's the one big thing. I had an incredible client who did a 24-hour endurance run, and I remember he voice noted me at 2 a.m. in the morning, and he basically just said, he was panting, just like down the phone. And he's like, Joe, it's pitch black. I can't see anything. I've been running for X amount of hours now and I'm absolutely bollocks and I'm really in a bad hole. but he said, I cannot wait to meet the person I'm going to be off the back of this. And I was like, mate, get my trainers on and get me out of the road. Because I was like, mate, that is unbelievable. Like, I'm in the hurt locker right now, but I cannot wait to meet the person that I'm going to be off the back of this. And it's like, that is just that ability just to be able to extend the time horizon and now recognize and realize, well, okay, the challenge that you're going through, the ability to have that resilience, that robustness, and that ability just to keep putting that one foot at the front of the other, and just the ability to shut those thoughts down and just keep going. I think you just
think with that clarity in the moment as well, and keep that there. It's unbelievable.
And I shared this, I actually put this in a slide for the event on Saturday. This is like, I personally believe that growth and success and progress is actually the balance between falling in love with the consistent daily behaviors and the boring, the awareness that you now have with your relationships, aka the relationship with yourself, the relationship you now have with money, the relationship you now have with success, etc. And then also the discipline to be able to extend the time horizon and have that delayed gratification and play the long game. And I think those three things for me, when I think about it, are like, that's, I believe, like the concoction. Like, can I now basically get back to the process and put another 2p into the machine? Can I now have that awareness around like the relationship I have with myself and why I'm now doing this, what drives me, what motivates me, what can I now use to get the very best out of me, what's currently triggering me, and then also that ability to be able to extend the time horizon and have the discipline to be able to go, well, okay, I'm fine just now, actually, I've got everything that I need, and it's the process and the journey that I'm now going through that I now know is going to be compounding and accumulating. And that ultimately as a byproduct is going to be the very thing that I find fulfillment and fun and success and the lessons in, rather than actually reaching the pot of gold at the end. And I think like, even for me, just thinking about that, it's like, how can you now continue to have that thought process and that mentality and that awareness in whatever it is that you're now looking to kind of like endure and do?
Yeah, you're going to be successful, aren't you? Basically, you can think in that way and see it from that angle and all those different points of view, and you're going places.
With the 20 plus years that you've now had, obviously, in the coaching game, you're like Yoda, mate. That's what I say. Whenever I send anybody, I'm like, Dan's got a ball, like, I'm big Dan up and he doesn't like it.
I'm like, again.
But
it's the same message, but it's a different person, isn't it? But we hear the same thing over and over again.
But I basically say, obviously, mate, being obviously in the industry for like 20 plus years and the ability to now be able to obviously still be in the game and impacting on the level that you are, like, what do you now believe has been some of the traits and the characteristics and the behaviours that you've now like lived within or learned that's now allowed you to have that extensive career? Because I believe the average coach lasts less than 2 years in the industry. I might be wrong on that, but like, it's not a long period of time. So what's now allowed you to have a 20 plus year coaching career, in your opinion?
Trying to enjoying, like, when a client says to you, you've changed their life, that's a pretty powerful statement. And when you hear that for the first time as a young coach, you can't not be inspired to want to hear that again. And I think that's a massive driver in like keeping you in the game and keeping you consistently doing that, just to want to be able to inflict that change. And we have the power. I don't think there's many jobs where you can actually do that. You can impact people the way that we can impact people, and have fun alongside that as well, and like actually like live by the sort of like standards and the principles and values that I sort of have at heart. Like, I love exercise, I love being outdoors, I love good food, and all those things align really, really well with being a coach and like just living and breathing what it is I do. So I find that quite easy to do that, and easy to inspire. And then if you can actually then combine that with helping, bringing out the best in other people as well, then, and you've got a positive frame of mind, you don't mind doing challenges, and you're a bit of a leader at the same time, and I think that's going to give you longevity in the game. But you've got to live and breathe it. You've got to love this. You've got to want to have change, and you've got to want to like find the different pieces to the puzzle and put them together and have challenges, and want to understand different personalities, different people. And if you don't like people, then you're probably not going to be into coaching. And as much as I come across and say that I'm a grumpy old fucker that like doesn't fucking like talking, doesn't like being in front of people, really, like, it's not true, because like I try to return back into my hermit sort of like village in Cornwall, but I then want to come out of it as soon as I get there again, because I want to be around people and I want to be buzzing around and like instilling that sort of like like wisdom and knowledge that I do have, and I've had over the years and stuff. So like I think you've just got to be passionate. Like if you're passionate about it, you love training, you love like helping people, then you're gonna have like longevity in this game.
Massively. I think one thing that stands out for me, I've got so many different questions in my brain that are going on right now, and I'm trying to compartmentalize the structure in all of them so I can think about them logically to actually moving forward because I'm excited. But I think one thing that stands out for me is like, I think ultimately you've got to commit to being the very best that you can possibly be, whether that's now traveling the world, learning from the absolute very, very best, and now committing to being the very best at your craft. Like ultimately the best way for you to now be able to get the very best results and become an authority figure in the marketplace and to have longevity is to now be the absolute go-to, because you're developing, you're improving, you're evolving, you're growing, and you're now committing to, how can I now improve my wizardry, my craft? And I think that's at the forefront of like everything. It has to be like, in order for you to now be able to have that ability to now be able to like say build and grow, obviously as like within this industry. So what would you say is kind of like changed in terms of like your coaching like evolution from like year 1, year 2 to now kind of like year 18, year 20 plus? Like what and how has your kind of like coaching developed and evolved, do you feel, based upon the experiences that you now have from an education and also an experience perspective?
Yeah, I think like initially the first sort of, I'd almost say 10 years or so working in London, worked in a little boutique like hotel gym where there's only a couple of trainers around, and I worked with every like walk of life within there. I worked with celebrities, royalty, policemen, nurses, doctors, and although in that period then I would be disgusted at the sort of sessions that I would put on and like the programming that I was doing right now, what I learned then was people. I learned how to interact. I learned how to use body language. I learned how to speak. I learned when to increase how fast I was speaking, because again, like you, I can sometimes go and I can start really, when I'm passionate, I can really get enthusiastic about things and talk really fast. But I learned how to slow things down sometimes. I learned how to change how I was speaking to speak more clear with some people, or to meet them at their level. And those 10 years, although they weren't particularly like productive when I look back on them from a knowledgeable point of view, or actually becoming what I understood was people. I travelled a lot as well. It became interesting. I had stories to tell, and that was a great time in terms of finding out who I was, what my values and purpose were, what I stood for. And then from there, because then I knew what it was I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be the best I could be. It then allowed me to then go, right, what do I need to level up here? What are the other areas I need to, like, personality, character-wise? Yeah, it's pretty good. Like, you can now sit in any room or feel comfortable having dinner at any sort of table. Now you probably don't know what you're fucking talking about, so you probably need to go and like travel and like learn from mentors and build your skills up in certain areas. And I think curiosity is a huge thing for a coach to have. I think they've got to be curious about the world, about other things. So then when they're actually interacting, like, I'm speaking back in the day when we used to actually do one-on-one training, but you need to have conversations. And like, even now, you still need to have conversations about things like, even in the online world, etc. And like when you do meet people in person, you don't want to be that person who then has got nothing to fucking say, has done nothing. You need to have those sort of skills. So when you look as a coach, it's like looking at all these different areas where you've got, like, whether it be empathy, whether it be your programming skills, whether it be your actual, what you've done as an athlete, etc. Like, you've got all these different areas, and you need to make sure that you're consistently developing and building them up to the highest levels that you possibly can. Find your weak spot in nutrition or like gut health or wherever little thing you might want to specialize in. Then you find your niche. Like for me, it was more like programming and more that sort of hybrid athlete, just from the challenges and things that I've done and the fact that I'm very much data driven. I love numbers, could have been an accountant probably. But actually that's sort of the area that I like to go in, and that's where I've sort of begun to specialise. And over time, if you've then had the experiences, you then can back up that you've walked the walk, and then you've actually got the knowledge as well to go with it, and suddenly you can then start to call yourself, or like people will call you, like people will say about you that actually that's the go-to guy for that particular thing.
And how important do you think like patience is within the coaching game, and the ability to now be able to again commit to that process and not cut corners and spend the time building the relationships? And I'll use a perfect example. Obviously, Dan's now recently come in as a head of athletic performance, and mate, you took pretty much 2 months where you've literally just gone from like being able to walk the dogs on the beach and train and obviously look after the athletes you're now working with, just chill out, to then obviously now working with the incredible coaches we've now got inside the program, and maybe you took the time to now get to get onto a call with every single one of those like people and like knock up the corners and do the work and put in the time. And it could have been easy for you to be able to go, yeah, okay, listen, this is what they're currently running, let me just now adapt and adjust their programming. But like, how important do you think like patience and the ability to now be able to kind of build relationships is currently in 2023?
It's everything. Like, I've never, like, you'll know, like, my social media is not good. It's like, it's just a diary almost for me. Like, that's all I've ever really used it as. Like, then maybe more recently I've put more sort of posts that are starting to be more entwined, that potentially could be where you're trying to potentially get some clients and etc. But really, it's just me telling the story of my values and who I am as a person, etc. And that's just over time. I've completely lost my line of thought. Where we're going there. What was the question to start with?
I don't even know. Where are we? What are we doing? We're doing a podcast.
But patience is something that you've got, like, as a coach, you've got to have, like, because these relationships that we develop, like, that's what we were talking about. We're talking about the relationships and building, having the conversations. It's something that I've always done and something that I value. And like, all of my business has pretty much come from referrals. It's come from people who I've worked with in the past or where I've been in the past, and I've then kept them as clients. I just don't lose clients or retain clients. They just stay as my clients because you give a good service, you care about them, you know their family. Like, I don't know, you take the piss out of me from going to so many weddings last year. I've probably been to 10 or 12 client weddings. Like, who can say they've been to 10 or 12 clients' weddings? Yeah. That shows you the relationships that you're building there. Like, if you're getting invited and you're that close enough to those people to want them to be at their wedding, and that shows you that they hold you in high regard in terms of as a friend. I'm not saying you're fucking the buyer friend sort of coach. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying you've built an actual real relationship where it's a life-changing thing. And that means a lot to me. And if I'm going to do the job that I want to do, that we want to do, then relationships are key to that. And I don't want it to just be a fob for 5 minutes of my time. I want to find out what actually makes them tick. I want to find out whether they need a bit of carrot or they need a bit of stick. What is their personality like? What do they like? What don't they like? Like, who is their family? Like, what aspect is that going to play with them? Because it all matters, and it matters to us.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like, we always talk about, like, we coach the person, not the process, and we focus on the human first, and the result as a byproduct follows. And I think it's that buy-in, it's that relationship and rapport that you now fundamentally build, that whenever I look back at any coaches or mentors, or even when I play football, like, the coaches you now have, like, the ones that get the very best out of you are the ones that are the most interested in you, the ones that take the time to be able to really get to know you. And it's the relationship and the human first approach that I think, especially in the online world, and I shared this last week, is like, how can you think less leverage and how can you think more connection in everything you're now currently doing? Because ultimately, to get the very best out of somebody, that's where you fundamentally need to be. And again, it is going to take time, it's going to take energy, but when compounded over time, if every single one of your current clients refer one person to you, you've now doubled, tripled, quadrupled your business. And then also the fulfillment and the connection, the relationships, and how you're growing and developing and evolving as a person, as a coach, and as a communicator as well, I think only heightens. And I think that's one big thing that I think we continue to place an emphasis and a focus on, and I've definitely done so. It's like, instead of like just now looking at what's the next best tool, strategy, hack, or tactic, like, how can I now become a better communicator, and how can I get better at building better relationships on a personal level? Because I know as a byproduct, then obviously the result will then fundamentally follow. And when you understand somebody at that level, we're talking about that in the car on the way here, is like, actually the time that we can now spend together as a team and as a kind of like community, like, the better we understand one another, the better this machine, in terms of like the energy that we're trying to curate and the safety that we're trying to provide, will build. And we talk about the football dressing room, it's like, it's a feeling. When there's a team that's got that cohesion, they understand one another and they know what they're thinking and how they tick, and they can just now almost like understand without having to say anything. And there's always that proactive like mentality. That's the teams that now like really win, and that's special, but it takes time and it requires a lot of nurturing, and it requires a lot of actually off the field and behind the scenes and the non-coaching, and actually just the like person to person rapport having a pint or whatever it now might be, or a peppermint tea in our case.
Yeah, exactly.
That it might potentially be, and I think that's the very thing that if you can cultivate and you have the patience to be able to develop and build, that's where you have that kind of like longevity and you have that like longer term kind of consistency and success, and you can continue to have a greater impact.
Yeah, it's simple. Like, this game is actually pretty simple. I had a conversation like at the conference that we went to recently, and it was on a table, people talking about like what were going to be the game changers for like 2023, and people were talking about funnels, like funnel, like,
Yeah.
fucking funnel. People talk about funnels, talking about putting fucking the graphics, and change the graphics on there, like, got this guy. Just like, like just be a fucking good person, be a really fucking good coach, and fucking care about people. Like, that will literally transform, and like that will change your business. If you just go and focus on those 3 things as much as you possibly can, the rest of it, don't get me wrong, it has its place, and you do need it in this day and age, 100%. But those are your fundamentals, those are your game changers, because you're probably, if you're worrying about those other things too much, you're probably misaligning these things, you're forgetting these things. And just as you said then, community, connection, it's lost in this day. Everybody's like working from home or not doing these things, and I think like COVID massively had an effect, like a change on these things, like changed our habits. It stopped us from going and doing these things as much, and we got out of the habit of actually doing like being in groups and stuff. And like, I remember previously paying thousands of pounds to travel around the world to have in-person like events. Those events just don't happen anymore. People don't put them on. The big coaches don't put them on anymore. It's strange. So I think what we're trying to bring back and what we have going on here is a game changer, because coaching can be a lonely world. You can be sitting there on your own, or maybe you are in a gym with other coaches around you, but you're not aligned with them. It's about finding your tribe, your people, bringing them together and realising that actually, do you know what, you're fucking alright, you're actually a normal person and you're doing a great job. Like, slap on the back, well fucking done.
It's just realising you're not alone. And actually I think sometimes you just see a highlight reel, and all you see is like the success, the growth, the progress, the wins, the this, the that, and then you're sat there and you're like, oh, I'm worried about this person, this client, this is going on, I don't know this, I'm trying to develop this, and like you just feel as though you've got this like chaos. And it's like, I think just people understanding that you're not alone. It's not about the load that you carry, but it's how you share that load that I think is so important. And it's when you've got those people around you to be able to now elevate, support, and give you a safe space, and to now be able to recognise and realise that they're on a very, very similar mission, vision and path to the one that you're now currently on, whether they're now a few steps ahead, whether they're aligned, and or they're maybe a few steps behind. It's like, it's the characteristics and it's the the togetherness that ultimately does now build. And this is about the collaboration and not the competitiveness of one another that we're now really looking to kind of like cultivate. Because I believe it's like one, especially inside the high performance coach, like how can we now completely transform and change and elevate the trajectory of the fitness industry by making it a stronger, safer and better place, by being the best that we can be. And that's now like an infinite game that I want us to now be able to play as a cohesive. And how can we then excel across like the different facets you spoke about, like, you know, like person, coach, athlete and business owner, like to simplify it and to now be able to kind of like really distill it down. But in order for you to now to get the best out of others, you've got to bring the very best out of yourself, and you've got to develop your craft, you've got to care, you've got to now like be a good human being, and you've got to now do the basic stuff that isn't sexy, it's not weird, it's not wonderful. And it's the consistency that is almost like even rarer than talent.
It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't buy it. You've got to develop this. It's cultivated, it's grown.
Yeah.
And it takes time, and that's okay. Because no one's in a rush. Don't be in a rush to fucking become a good coach. Just let it happen.
Yeah, I think is that you could almost kind of correspond back to that journey. Like, you know, the kind of the whether it's the Deca-Ironman, whether it's the 5K, whether it's the whatever it is that strip it back. I know where I'm kind of going and what I'm looking to accomplish and achieve. Okay, what do I need right now? Who do I now need around me to support me? Have I now got the strategy? Yes, I need to put one foot in front of the other. How can I now use the certain mechanisms and the strategies to now be able to control the thoughts that are now going on in my mind that are telling me to stop, to give up, you're weak, you're not good enough, or whatever it now might potentially be. And also to manage the highs of, all right, I'm crushing it, this is absolutely amazing, let's go and get after it. And to manage that emotion, to now be able to, like I say, bring it back to the here and now, the 1 meter squared, and to now be able to enjoy where you are. So yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Mr. Dan Reeve, Mate, I could keep talking to you for hours, and we could probably keep going all night.
Fucking freezing here.
It's freezing. We've got a nip on.
I bet the whole time I've been sat here going, shaking in the
Needs
corner.
needs a salmon carbonara to sit by the fire. So, team, if you've been able to extract even a slight bit of value, obviously, from today's podcast, and we'd absolutely love for you to now be able to share this with another fellow coach, and or if this is actually now allowed you to realise that you are not alone, and actually these kind of like weird quirks and perks that me and Reeve have spoken about today resonate with you, then we would absolutely love to know. Mr. Dan Reeve, thank you so much, mate. We appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.